Welcome to this explainer for St. Paul American School Clark. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating two-part journey. We're going to start out as detectives, trained to sniff out bias, and then we switch gears. We become architects, building really powerful, structured, persuasive arguments. Whether you're picking apart a news article or building an essay for your 9th grade English class, these are absolutely crucial, transferable skills you'll use way beyond the classroom.
Here's the agenda for our explainer today. We'll start with our core objectives, then move logically right into how to actually spot bias, the underlying logic of a solid argument, and the structural blueprint of an essay. We'll wrap the whole thing up with a quick formative check and a final recap.
Section 1. Explainer Objective. The Detective and the Architect. Section 2. How to Recognize Bias. The Detective's Work.
Okay, so before you can build an argument, you've got to evaluate your sources, like a really sharp-eyed detective. And according to some incredible research from the News Literacy Project, there are 5 main types of bias you really need to watch out for. Think of these as the hidden motivations behind why a story is told a certain way. You've got partisan bias, right, which is driven by a political agenda. Then there's demographic bias, relating to race, gender, or class. Corporate bias is all about business or financial interests. Then you have big story bias. This is where journalists might exaggerate something just to make it seem like a massive, earth-shattering event. And finally, neutrality bias. That's the forced attempt to make two unequal sides look perfectly equal, even when the facts heavily favor one side over the other.
Now, it's absolutely vital to distinguish the underlying types of bias from the forms they take in actual news coverage. The type is the why, but the form, that's the how. As a reader, you're going to spot bias by looking at these forms. You might notice bias framing, maybe an overly emotional tone, selective story selection, or skewed sourcing, where they literally only interview people from one side, or maybe just an overall absence of fairness and balance. Whenever you're reading a source, ask yourself, is the author using one of these forms to push a specific type of bias?
Section 3. The Logic of Arguments. Building a Foundation.
Right. Now that we know how to consume information critically by spotting that bias, let's take off our detective hats and put on our hard hats. To build your own structurally sound arguments, we're going to lean on some highly respected guidelines from the Purdue OWL. They help us understand how logos-based reasoning, meaning reasoning based purely on logic and facts, forms the absolute bedrock of any successful persuasive essay.
The foundation of this logic is something Aristotle called the syllogism. Now, don't let that fancy word intimidate you. It's honestly just the simplest sequence of logical premises and conclusions. Think of a premise as a building block of evidence. If block A is solid and block B is solid, well, they can hold up the roof, which is your conclusion. If your premises aren't logically sound, your entire argument just collapses.
Section 4. Structuring the Persuasive Essay. The Architect's Blueprint.
With our logical foundation securely set, we've got to act as architects to structure our essay. Using a really helpful writing blueprint provided by Elephantix, we can break this down into 3 clear phases. Step 1 is the introduction. That's where you grab the reader's attention with a hook and lay down a clear, debatable thesis. Step 2 is the body. Here, you prove your thesis using your logical premises as evidence, and, this is super important, you address opposing viewpoints. Finally, step 3 is the conclusion, where you summarize your main points and leave the reader with a powerful call to action or a final thought.
This brilliantly illustrates a worked example from the Purdue OWL regarding a fictional Mill Creek stadium. Notice how the basic logical premises actually outline the core of your body paragraphs before you even type a single word. Premise 1, that becomes the focus of your first body paragraph. Premise 2 becomes your second. And that logical conclusion, that is the thesis statement, tying the whole shebang together. It's a perfect logical blueprint.
Section 5. Misconception and Formative Check. Testing your knowledge. Let's clear up some common misunderstandings before we test out your new skills. A really major misconception is that acknowledging the opposing side somehow weakens an essay. No way. In reality, a concession actually strengthens your argument. By finding common ground and acknowledging valid points from the other side, you prove to your reader that you are a reasonable, ethical thinker. You're showing them you've looked at the issue from all perspectives, and that makes your ultimate argument so much more trustworthy.
Another misconception to bust right here, right now, is that bias is only ever political. When we hear the word bias, we almost always immediately think of elections or the government, right? But remember from our News Literacy Project sources that bias takes many forms. It can be demographic, corporate, or even a push for false neutrality. As a detective, you've got to keep your eyes peeled for all of them, not just the political ones.
Okay, time for a quick formative check to see how sharp your logical skills are. Listen to this argument from our Purdue OWL source.
The Volkswagen Beetle is an evil car because it was originally designed by Hitler's army. Take a few seconds and see if you can identify the logical flaw or fallacy in that statement.
So, if you guessed the genetic fallacy, you are exactly right. The flaw here is assuming that the origin of a concept or item inherently determines its current worth or nature. Equating the character of a car with the people who originally built it decades ago is a total breakdown in logic. Avoiding fallacies exactly like this one is absolutely crucial when you're building your own syllogisms.
Section 6. Recap of key concepts. Bringing it all together.
What a fantastic journey we've been on today. So to ensure your success, here are the crucial points to remember from our sources. First, critically spot bias as a reader by looking out for the 5 types and the 5 forms, like tone and framing. Second, form logical premises via Aristotle's syllogisms as a thinker, meaning make sure your evidence actually leads to your conclusion without any of those tricky fallacies. And third, cleanly structure your persuasive essay as a writer, building from an engaging intro through logically sound body paragraphs that include a concession, all the way to a really strong conclusion.
I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge. The next time an article or a video makes you feel intense anger or total agreement, just pause. Ask yourself, are they using sound logic to build an airtight argument, or are they just playing on your biases? The tools to find out are now right there in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and happy writing.